I remember sometime, so I'd say like spring 2015, I was sitting at a Milestones in Markham, had my laptop, and I was emailing every teacher in York Region, in business teacher. And I got zero responses. I spent 15 years in corporate, about half of it at Accenture, doing a bunch of consulting to different clients in different industries. And then another half of that would be at TELUS, where I ran a couple of departments. One was the project management office for the TELUS consumer contact centers. So anything that basically touched residential or mobility customers would go through. Anything that required us to talk to those clients and support them would typically go through my team. And then I also was a director of the web operations team. So at the time, my team took care of TELUSmobility.com and TELUS.com on the client-facing business side. So did a bunch of that, and I learned that what got me going was when I saw a problem that was important to me, such as my team members maybe lacking the skill or the experience to interact with other leaders and people that they needed, stakeholders who they needed to get their projects done. I got excited about helping them overcome that. That was more interesting to me and more compelling to me than the corporate job title. So I decided to leave TELUS in 2013, and I started a consulting practice where I worked with companies of various sizes. Really, the problems that I helped them with would be around the times that they were having challenges around their profitability. And about 5 years ago, I started a youth conference that focused on teaching youth entrepreneurship. While I was consulting, I also trained a bunch of startups around just various skills, regarding startups, starting up a business and supporting. And I did a lot of things to support the entrepreneurial ecosystem in York Region, just north of Toronto. So that brought me to starting this focus on youth and teaching youth problem solving and entrepreneurial mindset. And I've been doing that for the last 5 years. And yeah, it's turned into a thing that is a full-time occupation for me, which is nice.
Where does that stem from?
So I've always been somebody who will look around and see if different people have access to different help. And when I see a group of people already getting support, they may still be struggling, but if there's support's available to them, I'll look somewhere else for people who are not getting support. And in this case, it was youth. And I'm defining youth as students who are between grades 6 to 12. So what I found was in January 2015, I ran something called Startup Weekend. And it's a 3-day competition where adults, typically post-secondary students and older, they will get involved. And the goal is to start a business in 54 hours. And when I did that, one of the things that I wanted to give to the participants when they walked out the door after it was done was a document that said, here are the additional resources in York Region that can help you take your your business idea and help you bring it to fruition. So the small business enterprise centers, the incubators at Seneca, at York University, and so on and so forth. What I noticed when I did the research to put together that then 7-page document was that there was very little available to teenagers who might be interested in starting a business. So as an example, there was one guy named Josh in Newmarket who had told me the story that he wanted some assistance to grow his business, which was a legit business. And Josh at the time was grade 11. And what he was told by some of the organizations he reached out to in York Region was basically, you need to come in and visit us. Now he's in Newmarket, doesn't drive, and the organizations he contacted were in Markham. It would take him hour and a half to take the bus to get to them, and he could only do so after school was done. So by the time he got to the resource in question, they might be closed. They didn't do field trips, like they wouldn't go visit him, they wouldn't go on the road, they didn't work evenings or weekends. So Josh was in a really tough place that he was actively looking for help and he wasn't getting it. Never mind the students in the region and or GTA or wherever who were kind of curious about entrepreneurship and starting a business, but they didn't have a core idea, something concrete enough to approach these organizations. So they had nothing other than what their teachers made available to them through entrepreneurship courses or clubs or councils or guest speakers or whatever. So I saw a gap in what students at the time in high school were facing when it came to just learning about entrepreneurship and not coming in necessarily with a business plan, but just kind of, hey, what is it? And so that's where I kind of went, this group, the future leaders, and many of them are quite capable of doing something right now. They just don't have the resources to learn, to train, and have that safe environment to learn and train in. And so that's where my focus on youth really took hold, and that's kind of been my focus ever since.
I remember when we used to meet at these networking events and you told me about what you did, I thought, wow, that must be exciting. Are there a lot of students who are interested in entrepreneurism? Is it just, a small portion of students? Tell me about that. Maybe the energy that they have. What do you see when you're doing this for the youth?
There are definitely teens who they've decided that they're interested in starting a business. So they're often business students. They're often fans of Dragon's Den or Shark Tank. They may be technology fans. They're reading up on AI. They're reading up on blockchain. So there definitely is a group who self-selects themselves and self-identifies as an entrepreneur, future founder, whatever. But that's a small portion. If I look at the students I work with in classrooms, more of them do not identify that way. And more of them say, yeah, I'm here and I have my dreams. It's not that they don't have dreams, but my dreams are related to health and wellness, or my dreams are to help other people. My dream is not necessarily, I don't identify myself as a business student. When they go through the process of doing some innovation training or they do some inquiry-based learning, problem-based learning, stuff that I do with them, oftentimes the non-business students come away and they think, my God, I can make a difference to the thing that matters to me, and I don't have to identify as a business student. I just got an email this morning from a teacher. I worked with just in the past 3 weeks. I've worked with 250, 300 students in the York region, doing a lot of design thinking and problem-based learning programs. And she was telling me that this one class of hers who'd gone through the program that I created, they walked away going, my God, that was amazing. I can make these changes. I'm so excited. And she's reading this through the weekly journals that the students fill out. So to your question, it's a much smaller percentage of the students who identify as entrepreneurs. It's those other students who say, I'm really excited to solve a problem, but they don't have a label to it. They're the ones who I find get much more excited because now they have a mechanism to go and tackle that problem that bugs them.
I think that's so indicative of when we're young, we don't know what we don't know, right? So there are some that already know, they're going to be a doctor or they're going to be an entrepreneur, but some of us have to find those opportunities. And I think what you do through your Y2 to a startup is really help open those possibilities, those doors the youth have not even thought about because they don't have a template, they don't have somebody to pop that in. Tell me a little bit more about the design thinking. What does that entail? I think that's a terminology that not everybody is familiar with. So share that
Yeah.
with us.
So there's a school of thought or behavior that somebody will just come up with a product or a service and go, let me go and sell it, let me market it. I'm not entirely sure what problem it solves, but notionally, it's there, let's go sell it, which is one approach. Another approach is let's look at somebody who's affected by a problem and let's understand how that problem affects them. Let's understand how that person is coping with the problem. And then let's look at what's missing and use that as inspiration to come up with a solution. So for example, if I get headaches and I'm taking Tylenol and I'm taking all these drugs, and the effect on me is that when I have these headaches, even after I take Tylenol, I can't open my eyes because it hurts so much. Then and I've tried this and I've tried this. I've done these things. Maybe something I haven't done is nutrition. Well, in understanding how the person's affected, how it affects them, what they've tried, how they feel when it's happening, what the impact on them, the impact of the challenge on them is, I can look at that and say, okay, well, let's take that and start designing a solution based on the outstanding need, which might be, well, I have never looked at my nutrition. I've done everything else. I just haven't looked at nutrition. There might be something in there. And so design thinking really looks at, starts again with the person, how they're impacted, what, after all the things that are available to them today, what do they still need? And so when I go through the programming with the students, they'll identify a problem they want to solve. They'll build a persona, which is a fictitious character that embodies real traits and real impacts of somebody impacted by the problem. They'll look at that persona and understand what the persona needs, what they're doing to cope, like all the things I talked about. And then from there, the students start brainstorming solutions.
Are they doing it collectively in a group or are they doing it individually?
Most of the time they do it in group, which has been interesting in a COVID environment with lockdown. So prior to COVID, we'd be in a classroom, 20, 30, 40 students in a room. And I've done as high as 200 in a room. And they would be in groups of 4 or 5, and they would, in a group of 4 or 5, pick their problem. They would, together work on a persona and so forth, and build a solution as a group. With COVID and doing it online, and I say I work with school boards and teachers, so we figure out ways to use online technology like Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, not so much Zoom, because there's some privacy issues, but same idea, where we can use these different rooms to create breakout rooms. And in the environment for we're a situation where a lot of the students have been doing asynchronous learning in the past 4 months. A lot of them really get excited by the fact that they can be in a virtual room with 4 other students in grade 8 or 9 or 11, 12, 10, whatever it is, and talk to people. But yeah, that's kind of how this works. They work in groups, and they bounce ideas off each other, and the collaboration, whether it be in person or online, it's electric to feel the students connecting with each other.
The buzz in the room when it was live must have been really exciting and energizing, and probably draining by the end of the day too.
Yeah, I mean, you're right on both counts. What's been even more interesting is to go visit the individual virtual rooms.
Oh,
So the way I construct the programming, we'll do like 2 hours. I'll do a brain dump on them, talk about problems, and maybe I invite somebody from the community, a business owner, to come in and share his or her challenges. We'll take 20 minutes for that, and the students will know what's coming. After that 20 minutes, the students go away for 15 to go pick a problem, and they come back, and I'll do a thing on what is a persona and give them some examples, and that'll be 10 minutes. And then the students go away for 20 to go construct a persona. And so there's this back and forth where they get a little bit of instruction. They get the concept, they get the example, and then they go away and apply it. And then they come back. And when they're applying and they're doing their group work, I'll visit each room just to see how things are and see if they've got questions. If in the virtual session, the everybody in a room session, if I see, I'll notice that mics are muted and I'll notice that cameras are off. In the rooms, more often than not, cameras are on and the kids are talking to each other. And it's in a lot of the rooms, just like I've walked into, or virtually, walked into rooms, and there's so much chatter that's going on. It's exciting to hear that even in a COVID environment, the kids are still active. They're still active. They're still engaged. They
yeah,
still want to learn. It's kind of
yeah.
cool.
It's interesting. You've done this now for several years, right?
Yeah.
Any success stories that some students you keep in touch with, or they come back to you and say, "Thanks to you, this happened"?
Yeah, I get a lot of those.
Share a few of them with us.
When someone thinks success story, can vary, right? Because everybody
Yeah,
starts
yeah.
at a different start line. So I might, with one student, she came into one of the conferences that we ran in 2016, and she came in with the idea that she wanted to address the problem of waste management, specifically on single-use plastic spoons. She wanted to bring down the waste caused by that. And the question that she had was, okay, so if we've got somebody who's eating ice cream on, Markham Main Street or the X, and they eat their ice cream, they throw the spoon away. Well, what if we gave them a spoon that they could eat? So that was the beginning of something called Cutlery. So Lynn Chen and her team came up with these edible dessert spoons. For the judging during the conference, they had 3D printed a mold. They researched recipes, so they came in with candy spoons, and they passed it out to the judges as part of their final presentation. And they were one of the 2 teams that were awarded the prize or prizes. Since then, they've gone on to establish as a company. They're still shipping today. They've had deals over the past couple of summers with Kawartha Dairy, where Kawartha would sell the spoons to their customers, I think for $1, and it would be like a novelty item, but it would add to the Kawartha experience. So Cutlery is one of those stories that started at a conference, and they are still an ongoing business. Lynn herself has gone on to start another company that's helping software developers to accelerate their testing when they're building apps. So, she's definitely one story that I think when we think of startups, those are kinds of the stories that we celebrate. Somebody got X dollars of funding, somebody hit, X number of X dollars in revenue. In my world, there's another level of success, which is the student who tried something that he or she would not have tried. And those are not the ones that make Dragon's Den. Those are not the stories that make headlines. They're the really quiet ones, but the students walk away with something where they went, I didn't think I could do that.
That's a success story in itself. When you can see somebody who strives for something and they create something and they feel a sense of accomplishment, and that years later resonates into a really pivotal moment for that person to know that they were capable of doing more than they had done before this event happened. It's a catalyst for growth.
Oh, absolutely. And I've worked with students who may not have had these opportunities because of whatever reason. And so there's a story I'll tell you about Logan. Logan, when I worked with him, he was grade 7. He had some learning challenges. So I'm working with one class of grade 8s and one class of grade 7s in the school. So I've gone in and I'm teaching them problem-based learning, this one program, over multiple weeks. So Logan comes in and he's the first class, he's disengaged, he's not really paying attention. And kind of the teachers were like, yeah, we're working with him. This is kind of him. We're trying to work with him. And we got to the point that we were building a prototype. So Logan's group had picked a problem that addressed something that was going on in his house, with his family. So very close, it was an interesting class overall to see the challenges the students picked reflected their own worries and their own concerns in real life. So Logan had this idea, his group did, and he came to me and said, so it's a physical idea, so I guess you're going to teach me Tinkercad, which is a software to allow 3D designs. I said, no, I'm not teaching you. Well, how am I going to learn it? I said, well, you ever play Minecraft? Yeah. How'd you learn that? YouTube. Oh, I can use YouTube to learn about Tinkercad. I'm like, absolutely you can. So is that a bad thing? Not at all. Tinkercad, the company and Tinkercad users have created videos, so you should totally go watch those. And so he did. And so he went away to his group and the bell rang, 3:30. And all the students get up and leave except for Logan. Logan's sitting there and the teacher's like, Logan, it's time to go. And Logan said, I'm not done yet. I'm not done. Just 5 more minutes. And the teacher turns to me and said, Logan's always the first kid, always like he's ready at the door. So I'll fast forward. He did a design, and then I worked with New Make It, which is a makerspace in Newmarket, to print out the 3D designs that came from this class, and Logan's was one of them. And because Newmarket and Keswick, which is where Logan's based, are 15 minutes away, so I drove it up, and that class happened in a meeting. So I gave Logan the little robot thing he had designed, and his group just went, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" I said, "Well, on top of that, remember that until this very moment, that was in your head. You're now holding it." So he was excited. He went home that night, and at dinner time, as I found out from his teacher, at dinner with his parents and his younger brother, he described this experience so far, and his brother was so psyched that the brother took the robot printout to his school for show and tell, and he was saying that my brother made this. And so Logan was proud, was proud. The brother was proud for Logan. And it was, to your point earlier, this kid who'd not done something like this walked away going, I did it. And so in 5, 10, 20 years, maybe that was a championship moment in the future for him to look back to and go, you know what, in this situation I'm facing right now, I don't know if I can do it. But back when I was in grade 7, I did do it. So maybe I can do it now.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we as people in our journey need those little successes along the way so that 10 or 20 years later, we are reminded that, geez, I had 10 success stories. Why don't I feel successful? Maybe if we take that internal thoughts that we've had over the years and say, hey, I can do this. I really, really can. And so I love that conversation years ago when we met at a network event and your eyes really lit up when you talked about you wanted to get involved with the youth and you were doing this Saturday marathon thing. And I love to see fast forward 5 years later that you're now doing it steadily. Share a little bit about that steady work helping the youth of tomorrow.
Yeah. I remember sometime, so I'd say it's like spring 2015, I was sitting at a Milestones in Markham, had my laptop, and I was emailing every teacher in York Region, in business teacher. And I got 0 responses. We're not interested in what I had to say. And fast forward now, there's a lot of conversation I have with teachers. I don't mention that as negative or bitter at all. For me, it's a sign of how I think not the philosophies around teaching have shifted to be, but I think there's more broader interest in problem-based learning. I also think teachers have so much to manage that not every teacher's had the opportunity to learn about how they might incorporate something like design thinking or problem-based learning into their curriculum and their classroom. So there's been greater interest to look at providers, whether it's Y2 or other providers of similar programming. And the other thing is the greater interest is a reflection on how many more teachers are interested in incorporating this with their students. So for example, I've worked with geography, history, and science teachers who have said, we want to give our students, we're going to assign our students group projects where they need to take a project from, they've selected a project to some sort of an outcome. But we don't know how to get them to a project. Could you do that? Like, could you help them identify a solution that they want to work on? So I'll take the first part of the problem-based learning program that I developed and use that to help the students narrow down their thoughts to arrive at, as a group, what solution do they want to start working on. And that gets handed off to the classroom where they then work on it for the remainder of the semester or the unit or whatever it is. That's probably the most common way that I get involved. I'll go into classrooms and teach the full program. More often than not, though, I'll customize the problem-based learning program that I have for whatever the teacher wants to accomplish. So some teachers say, you know what, we don't care about financial forecasting or business model because this is a science project and we don't really want to go into that. We want them to really dive into understanding the science of their solution. Great. So we'll chop out business model canvas and we'll chop out financial forecasting. Some teachers have said, well, we don't want to limit the students to do just like a Dragon's Den pitch. We want to open it up because they're arts and culture type students and they want to be creative. Great. So let's give them some options on their deliverable. They can do a podcast, they can do a video, they can do an infographic or whatever. So it's a lot of what I'll do is I'll bring the stuff that I have on problem-based learning, and then I'll talk with the teachers, see what they want to do. What are their learning objectives? Do they want to do it in one day? Do they want to do it in 1 week? Do they want to do it over X number of weeks? And then I'll customize it. So it really varies, but the commonality is the students will pick a problem, they'll understand what the impact is on a human being, what that human being needs, and use that to inspire a solution. So whatever the permutations of what I do is, it always has those commonalities.
And I think, what you're offering now to schools, to the youth who take it, is really that full solution, understanding the solution, taking it through its cycle and coming up with solutions. Because that's what life is about. You have a problem in life, you think about the options, you create a solution, and you test that out. If I can recall back to my days in school and university and high school, it's those special projects you remember. It's not the day-to-day, what you need to do. It's those special projects. So I suspect that when they are given the opportunity to be part of a program, a class that is different from the routine, that's the ones that are going to stick. So I can only think how gratifying that must be for the students and for yourself to be having that connection. I know that you love giving back to the community, and I know that you were one of the co-founders of Startup York, which is now called AMP Up York?
Amp Up York, yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when I started my consulting business in 2013, I remember not knowing where to begin. So I just had left TELUS. TELUS had all of these support, whether it's IT, whether it's HR, whether it's finance, whatever I needed to navigate within the TELUS world, there was something there. But when I left and I'm standing there, metaphorically standing in my house going, what do I do now? It really wasn't clear to me where I would go. So I kind of tried going to the Board of Trade, and I tried going to the Small Business Enterprise Center. And I tried this and tried that, but it was all very trial and error for me. So at that time, I'd started a meetup at Unionville, and the idea was to have business owners come and we could share in a safe get environment. So it was, environment not to go and pitch and sell, but to support each other. And so I worked with someone named Jennifer Green. She's been running her own accounting or bookkeeping company for, I'd say, a good part of 20 years. And we really got along kind of one top line value set, which was we both said, imagine 10 years from now, we look at our backyard. So Markham and go beyond. So Richmond Hill, Vaughan, go to Stouffville, et cetera. So we look at York region. We would love to in 10 years look back and go, you know what? We have not only is there a vibrant ecosystem of business owners of all industries and all business stages, but we know that we contributed along with other people to create this vibrant community. And Startup York was our vehicle to do that. So you have these organizations that already deliver training. You have organizations that bring business owners together in networking situations, but you have to pay to be part of the chamber board. So Jen and I went through this. We said one thing that's missing is a free peer-to-peer, no pitch, no sales environment. And we would welcome business owners from any industry, any background, including people who might have a corporate job and they're thinking of leaving, but they haven't decided yet. And the whole idea was to create this safe environment of community where if we were in Liberty Village in Toronto, it would be the equivalent of setting up this bar where people would just drop in. But in York region, we don't have anything like that. So we said, well, let's just create a virtual, people will know the third Thursday of each month will be at Turtle Jacks in Richmond Hill, drop by. So we started building that network, and it really was, it was great. I say Jen and I met a lot of people through that. People who did not want to pitch, people who wanted to give, people who, would rather not fight over a slice of pie, but rather make the pie bigger and do it together. So from 2014 onwards, Startup York, we started getting involved in ecosystem activities. So everything from economic planning with the regional municipality of York to getting involved with the incubators. So everything from York University's Y Space and Launch YU to Seneca College's Helix to Venture Lab. We were partners with the Small Business Enterprise Centers, and we were kind of that one of the voices that we could access business owners and entrepreneurs. And the whole thing was free, and the whole, like, Jen and I never got paid. We actually don't have a bank account. So Startup York was never incorporated. Startup York was entirely 100% a grassroots movement with the goal of bringing together business owners and entrepreneurs. We kind of said, if someone really wants to sell, there are other places they can go sell, not here.
I mean, all of this is you giving of your time, giving of your knowledge, and not in return saying, hey, pay us this, pay us that. Where does that giving, this freeness of giving, come from?
I'm blessed to have the ability, the time and the means and the skill to do it. To me, it was to be blessed to have all of that. It would be irresponsible not to give it back.
Yeah. Yet I find some people don't, right? They do have the means and the time, and yet they don't. And I know people sort of say to me, yeah, Hilda, you just love to give, and you don't even care if you make money. But I get my gratification of knowing that I've done something for somebody. They don't have to thank me, but I know that I've given something that helps them. And I think I always admired you because you did that. You gave to the community. You supported people to help them build their business with no need to expect something in return. And I think that's the true giving. And when you're out there networking, it is about, don't network to say, hey, I got a house I could sell for you. And they just keep blabbing on. Mm-hmm. They don't even know you don't need a house, right? They're not comfortable in how to network, and they pitch without knowing that you need what they're selling. And so you've always given not with the means in mind of getting something out of it, but just truly freely giving. That happens with the Y2 spaces. That happens with the startup Amp Up York.
Yeah. So and when you and I met, it was at something called Entrepreneurs in Residence. So it was like the speaker series. And that would be a perfect example of it. So I've always been the person who's more comfortable drawing the lines on a field and letting people play the game on the field than being somebody on the field. So drawing the lines on a field that then a soccer game can happen played by other people. EIR was an example of that, where there were so many interesting stories, inspiring stories of resilience, of creativity, of people helping, kind of like what you're doing with this series. And EIR was created not because I had anything to say to myself, but what I wanted to say was better told by people sharing their stories. And so the EIR format was created specifically to highlight the entrepreneurs who may not be Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg, and they may not be 9-figure revenues, and they in the same way that's what's celebrated by the startup world, right? Somebody raised $35 million of funding. Yeah, but what about the person who is just is bootstrapping, or they're self-sustaining? They have customers, they're selling, but they're not the ones that are flashy and so forth. What are those stories looking like? And maybe somebody hearing someone else struggle may inspire them. And it's that, like, let's not, is there a way of showcasing people who are still on their journeys? They're not done their journey.
I mean, that you're right. Like the EIR Entrepreneur in Residence, I think that's what it stood for, is something like people that went to those really wanted to hear the stories, because it's about lessons learned. It's about the fact that you're sharing something that might resonate with me that I will be using to help build my business. Or I'm not alone. We all struggle. We don't just start off and be Bill Gates. He was in his garage, maybe trying to go to an EIR, tell his little tale of difficulty. So it's giving everybody hope. And I think that's why I'm doing these podcasts, because it's about stories. Some people, my audience, are people who want to learn from storytelling. You're a very modest person, Lucas. You've done so much, and you've helped so many. And I hope that you have that inner feeling of satisfaction to know that you've done so much and touched so many lives, whether they're the youth of tomorrow, budding entrepreneurs, or they're people who have been in a career and decided to do entrepreneurship. I think you've touched a lot of lives. You've given back to community, and really, really appreciate this. How can people contact you if they want to know more about what you do?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Hilda, for doing this and giving to the community. And I mean, we're on LinkedIn together, so I see your updates. You know, all the things you're doing to help the community and other entrepreneurs and business owners. So thank you. In terms of reaching me, I tweet here and there. So at Lucas_Chang is one way to see what I'm doing and see the ridiculous thoughts that go through my head. Website would be Y2, the letter Y, the number 2 labs, LABS.co, not .com. So y2labs.co, that's the website. And if somebody is interested in connecting, any email sent to through that site comes to me and we can take it from there.
Cool. Well, I thank you for coming on today. I thank those that listen because hopefully you've gained some gems from this. I think what Lucas offers is the opportunity to understand giving back to the community, finding that passion that feeds you and gives you satisfaction and in turn helps other people. And I think that's the key essence. And this man gives so freely of himself, modestly, and I don't want to make you too feeling uncomfortable about that, but you are, you've given so much. And I've been blessed and touched by you when I said, hey, I'd love to tell my story. And I was one of your EIR speakers one day. And I just love that opportunity to share, to help others, because I think we can always learn something from somebody else. So thank you very much
Thank
today
you.
for coming.
Thank you. This is great. Thank you.